Today we are going to talk about how to mix prints. So you want to start with one anchor print, a print that you love, that you're obsessed with, and then we can go from there. I'm going to use a real life scenario of a project that I'm working on right now. So this is one of my client's fabrics in her house. This is in her room in shades. So as you can see, there are different colors in here. One really important thing to keep in mind with mixing prints is make sure the color values stay the same. You can go lighter, you can go darker, but these colors have a certain amount of brightness to them. So these are pretty bright colors versus very muted tones. Keep them the same relative brightness. I'll show you an example. So this green is about the same brightness as the greens on here. This is also a yellow green. You want to make sure that when you're pulling colors, you keep it within the same kind of color tone too. So let me show you what I mean by that. This is a blue green. This is pure emerald green. This doesn't go with this, right? And it really doesn't go with this print because there's no emerald in here. This is really more of like a grassy type green versus this is an emerald green. So we want to stay away from that. We also want to stay away from tones that are more muted. So even though this is kind of more of a grassy green too, and I hope this is coming through right on the camera, but this is too muted to go with this. It's also like just really funky and I wouldn't put those two together. But so make sure the color values that you're choosing are the same. In the same way, so we've got some purple in here and some magenta. So I pulled some kind of magenta-y fabrics and some purples. And you can see the tones go really well with each other. So another thing to keep in mind is we want to mix up the subject matter of our prints to make sure that there's some variation. So this one's kind of like a florally, almost Asian chinoiserie type theme. So we don't want to pick 3 more chinoiseries. That would be really, really boring. So what we want to do instead is find some other prints that are different scales that kind of all flow together. So this is one very small portion of a very large scale print. So it's got what's called a really big repeat, pattern repeat. So we're going to mix some ones that are more medium scale and tinier scale to give it some variation. So here is a print. It's a tone on tone print. And if you're scared of mixing prints, this is a good place to start, right? Because it's really only 1.5 colors. So tone on tone print can go with this just fine. Again, the greens, both grassy greens, and they go together. So we could do that. And then we could also bring in like a smaller print. See, this is much smaller than this, again, for some variation. And we've got just a color and a neutral in that too. We're not exploding and introducing 15,000 new colors, but you know, there's like 3 really good colors in here. So we can kind of take from these and then expand. And one thing you need to keep in mind too when you're mixing prints is that the ground, so the background color, should be similar as well. So this is kind of like a beigey background color. So we want to make sure that anything that we're integrating with it also has that same beigey color in it versus like a really bright white. So here's one that's kind of more bright white. See how that kind of just doesn't go. Doesn't go. It's because the background on this is too white. The green's actually a really good green. The subject matter's a little close together too, so it's not something I would like really recommend. But I mean, we could make it work if the ground was a different color and it was somewhere else in the room. I wouldn't necessarily put these two together on a sofa or anything like that. Here's another example though. This is kind of like a stripe and this can go with this. It's not a perfect coordination because this is almost a little too periwinkle, but it kind of gives you an idea. And then if you're going to mix in other colors with a print like this, don't go crazy. Try and find colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. So, you know, you might want to mix in a little bit of blue since blue is in between green and purple. I wouldn't necessarily go nuts and introduce an orange in here just because there's no orange in here unless it's elsewhere in the room. I mean, you can, but that's kind of professional level mixing. One way to do that though would be to take something like this plaid, and at the surface these really don't seem to go, but the colors really do blend. So you could have this in the same house as this print and make that cohesive feel throughout the different rooms, but not necessarily have these two right next to each other. They probably wouldn't go too great right next to each other. And then here's another one that kind of has that same little bit of orangey feel to it. which could actually go because the other two colors work. But in general, orange probably wouldn't be the best with this. So, okay, let me make sure I look at my notes. So keep the color value in mind. So make sure that you stay with, you know, the more reddish purples here instead of blue purples. Make sure you stay with the more yellow greens instead of blue greens. And you should be all set for color value. You can go lighter or darker, and I do encourage that. I had one, oh, here's an example. So this is a much, much lighter version of this green, but it's still kind of on that same line of color. It just has more white added to it, right? It doesn't have more blue added to it. It doesn't have more brown added to it. It's just a lighter color. So this could work really well with this as well. And then make sure that you vary the kinds of prints. So we want like a small star print with our big floral print. We can take a little stripey do with our floral print. We don't want all floral prints mixed together. And we want to make sure the size and scale is different. So hope that helped. Drop me a line if you have any questions. Bye.